Hello and welcome to another episode of It Could Only Happen on Earth, the show where we look at all manner of weird, bizarre, and head-scratching encounters from around the world. I'm Marcus Lowth, and joining me as does every week is my co-host and good friend, Paul Seaburn. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Marcus. Thank you for that great introduction and great day here in Ohio where I'm at. Nice weather. We are uh, in the throes of a Bigfoot well epidemic. That's the word I was looking for in the Northeast Ohio area. So one of these days we'll talk about that as well. But we couldn't do that today because we have just way too many great unusual stories from around the world. Um, so this is it. This is Planet Earth, and that's the name of our show. So let's go right into it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, as you say, I mean, we prove every week that it really could only happen on Earth. Now, we were saying a little bit before we come on air about how, the world, it looks a little bit fickle right now. But the first story we're going to look at is like a harbinger of doom almost. So it doesn't really bode well, Paul. So tell us all about this.
I've this is one that I've written about over the years, and I should have been expecting it to happen. Um, it's almost you can't have a natural disaster, especially an earthquake or a tsunami, without a news story coming up very soon after it about an oarfish, a giant oarfish, the oarfish of doom, as you're talking about. Um, and sure enough, we've got plenty of things going on around the world, in particular in the Middle East. And sure enough, um, in just a few days after the war in Iraq began, two women who were vacationing in Mexico claimed that, said that, gee, just a couple of days before the war started, we were down on the beach and there was not one but two oarfish on the beach, two 30-foot long giant oarfish. Very unusual because these are deep sea fish. You don't normally see them. They're also the long ribbon looking thing, so they're just an unusual, scary looking sea serpentish type of creature. So this was on the beach in Cabo San Luis, a beautiful San Lucas, beautiful place in Mexico. Um, the two women sisters, they were they tried to push it back in the water, both of them back into the water, and neither one of them survived because no one has ever seen them outside of the ocean, and they're rarely seen because they're so deep in the water. Uh, the so right off the bat, people are concerned because A, it's the doomsday fish, and we'll talk about why that is in a second. But B, you never see two of them together. So, if this is about the war in Iraq, it's going to be really bad. That's basically what everybody's worried about. Um, we don't know. The oarfish don't show up with a note on them. We're here to warn you about this. Okay, so we look around the world, people who are writing about it and say, oh, well, this could be this, it could be, there's no earthquake, so it's probably this. Um, but in 2025, just last year, there were a number of doomsday fish sightings in mostly in Mexico along the Baja coast, which is apparently where there's a lot of oarfish. Some in off the coast of southern India. There was a couple in Australia, off the coast of Tasmania, two in New Zealand. So I hate to say that, they're in resort areas far from where the problems occur, other than earthquakes and tsunamis, but a long way from Iraq, Iran, and some of the other places where there's really bad things happening. Um, so you don't see them. They're not like they're huge fish. They're 40 feet long. They're like skinny flat whales, but you can't go looking for them. There's no oarfish tours like we have whaling tours. You can't go out in the ocean and see them because they're thousands of feet deep normally. The doomsday legend about them comes from Japanese legends, Japanese folklore. There was a god, the dragon god, Ryanjin is his name, and they Japanese people believed that the oarfish was the messenger from the sea god's palace, and it was basically the dragon god sending his messengers up to say, "Hey, you guys, as always, start behaving better, or I'm going to punish you."
Yeah.
So I thought that it had to be close in time, but it doesn't necessarily have. The people who believe in the doomsday aspect of the oarfish, it could be, weeks and months before that the oarfish occurred. And a perfect example of this, and this is why the event that really introduced many people around the world to the doomsday oarfish was the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan, which killed over 20,000 people. Uh, so once they calmed down from that, they started looking around at what could have happened before that, and they found that just in the weeks before, 20 oarfish were beached on various beaches in and around Japan. So in 2009 and 2010. So that was close enough for those who believe it to say, oh, well, obviously they were warning us about the earthquake and the tsunami. Now, that was enough to inspire scientists and oceanographers to look at it, the marine biologists, and see if there was a scientific reason for why this might have happened. And one of the things that I thought was interesting at the time, and it made sense to me, prior to the earthquake, deep on the floor of the ocean could have appeared cracks before the major earthquake. And gases, poisonous gases, could have been released. Even carbon dioxide could have been released from those cracks, and it affected the oarfish that were right above it, pushing them to find better waters to swim in, and they couldn't get any place else, and they went to the surface where they, of course, drowned or died. So, but the study in 2019 that they did about that particular incident, they said that oarfish are nothing more than illusory correlation. So it's merely coincident that oarfish happen to appear somewhat close to earthquakes. So scientific reasons didn't like that. But as I was researching this, I found an even better folklore that I like more than the doomsday oarfish. I don't know if you've ever heard this one before, but and this is also believed to be the cause of earthquakes, is a giant underground catfish that lives underneath the Japanese island. I had never heard of this. It's called the namazu. Now, the namazu causes earthquakes. And when it, the reason why it does, it's usually guarded by a god. The god is Tama Tamakazuki, and I apologize to all the Japanese out there because I know I mispronounced that. He restrains these giant catfish with a stone. That's the legend. But apparently, he gets distracted at times. I don't know if there's a beautiful goddess who bothers him or what. But when he's distracted and he's not guarding the stone, the giant catfish sneaks out and causes earthquake. And then I don't know if he has to do something, he has a magic rope that he catches it with, or a fishing line, or whatever it might be. They didn't say exactly how that works. He brings it back under the rock, and everybody is protected from earthquakes. And this was tied to another earthquake. This is where people learned about it back in 1855, the Edo earthquake, which killed 10,000 people and destroyed over 14,000 buildings in Japan. At that time, there was an eel fisherman who claimed that he saw unusual activity among the catfish where he was fishing for eel that he had never seen before. And again, this is one of those after the fact. But people who were desperate to find a cause, whether real or folklorish, said, "Oh my God, that's got to be the catfish god who was predicting that he was going to cause the earthquake." Um, Scientifically, though, this one is for real. And that's what I like about it. In the 1930s, some Japanese marine biologists and seismologists got together and they started studying the behavior of catfish prior to and during earthquakes. And they found that catfish, like some other animals, do get agitated prior to an earthquake occurring. So they said they did one particular study said that catfish predicted earthquakes with an 80% accuracy. If I'm living in an earthquake zone, that's good enough for me. I'll take any warning I can get. So maybe instead of watching for oarfish, we should be watching for the catfish. Instead of eating catfish and watching for oarfish, maybe it should be the reverse. Although I don't know how oarfish taste. But you know, I used to visit Louisiana quite often, and if you deep fry anything in Louisiana, it tastes good. So um, so I don't think you heard the catfish story by any chance?
No, no, I've not heard that at all, actually. But as you were telling the story of of the oarfish, the first thing I was thinking is, well, surely they're picking up on something like you said on the seabed. Now, it says that study kind of dismissed that, but I don't know. I just think I'd want to be taking another look at that, to be honest with you, because there are loads of examples of animals. I think, yes, I'm saying, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure in the 2004 tsunami, after the fact, there are reports of animals, whether it's dogs or wild animals, retreating inwards days before anything actually happened, and they were picking up on something. And so, yeah, and I think we've spoke before briefly about dogs, for example. I'm not saying they know when on earth it's going to happen, but they are very in tune and they can see and hear much more than we can. So I would imagine that's the same for a lot of animals. And I suppose it's almost like a drawback that as a collective we are very intelligent, we are very forward thinking, but it's almost as if we've lost that touch with nature as well because of that. Maybe
Mhm.
animals have got literally they've got to rely on what they've got, and they're not going to evolve as humans have. So they perhaps are in tune here. So yeah, I think it's like you said, if you lived in an earthquake zone, then you might want to get some catfish and have them on earthquake duty or something. But I mean, we're joking, but in all seriousness, maybe we need to be
Ah,
looking at animals, not to the be all and end all, but just like you said, indicators. So you think, okay, well, that's happening, they're acting like that. Last time that happened, and so there you go. Just from a paranormal angle, though, I know there was a few silly videos going around after the Fukushima place in Japan, which were nothing but hoaxes. But there were reports from I think it was, I can't remember exactly how long, several years earlier, there was a bad earthquake in New Zealand, Christchurch, I think it was. And
okay.
it might have even been a year afterwards. But there were loads of reports of paranormal activity in the days and weeks afterwards. People who never had a haunting, suddenly reporting some spirit in the house, demonic activity, or so called. And the theories generally were that because the buildings have been moved and destroyed and, just changed, basically it unleashed a lot of these. It could also be to do with electromagnetic energy, who knows? But yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's really interesting stuff. And I think we need to maybe, it's hard to force ourselves to be in tune with nature, but perhaps we could learn a lot from this sort of stuff. And I'd be looking again
Oh,
at
yeah.
those oarfish. I really would if I were those scientists, because I don't know if I don't like coincidence, to be honest.
I agree with that, Marcus. And you're right. Our planet is covered 80% by water. So this is the first time I've heard of catfish being a harbinger of doom as well. There's probably more creatures in the ocean that could be telling us far more information about what's going on in the 80% of this earth that they inhabit. Um, whereas we're looking at cows and things that live on land. They're not doing the good job of warning us of too many
No.
things. Uh, I vote for catfish.
I think you're right there, Paul. Absolutely.
All right, so a completely different story here. I don't even have a good segue for you here, but if you play the lottery, you might be interested in this story. How about that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So we're going to go from predictions of doom then to predictions of joy, because if you win the lottery, I would imagine there's not many people who wouldn't be happy about that. So this goes to it's about a chap in Fort Washington, Maryland. And back in December, he basically purchased two lottery tickets and he won $50,000 on each of them. But he had to wait until March 6th to claim his prize. I don't know whether that was the first opportunity he got to travel to the headquarters or whether there was a certain cooling off period. I'm not sure. Um, so yeah, he said though that he felt there'd been a glitch in the matrix. and that he'd been seeing the winning numbers on several different license plates, which,
Oh,
I suppose so it's whether he's imagined it or not, I don't know. But given the amount of license plates and the fact that they're supposed to be unique to each individual, the fact that he's seeing these combination of numbers is really quite interesting. But yeah, he swears that the reason he put the tickets on in the first place is because he'd seen this three, four, five times and thought, I have to act on this. And $100,000 richer he became. Now, it makes me kind of wonder, it made me wonder then, how many other things happen in life that people don't give a second thought to? And I'm not saying that, all kind of, if you concentrate hard enough, you'll get the winning lottery numbers. I don't mean that, but just kind of walking down the street and you suddenly think, no, I'll not cross there. And then a car zooms right out in front of you. The list goes on and on of examples that could be, shall we say, an otherworldly influence. Now, I mean, regarding the lottery, for example, I mean, I couldn't do this because we have the lottery here in the UK. And over the years, for reasons unbeknown to even myself, I've managed to memorize four certain lines, four lottery lines. So I have to now, twice a week, I must put those lines on because I know what they are. And if they ever come out and I've not put them on, I'm going to be distraught, So I've done that to myself, basically. And
wow.
there was one time when I generally did forget to put them on. And honestly, I was just waiting for that draw, thinking, please don't be my numbers. Please, the only time I ever wished for my numbers not to come out, and they didn't, thank God. But yeah, I mean, there could be signs all over the place, basically, that we should be taking certain action, that we or not taking certain action, and maybe we ignore them. I mean, this guy could have easily not put those numbers on. I mean, obviously, we have to take into account that maybe he's been a bit economical with the truth just to have a nice story. But I mean, when you've got $100,000 in your bank account, why would you bother messing around like that? So I'm taking him at face value. But what I would like to say is, if he's watching this show, if you can predict the UK lottery numbers, then drop me a message, and I'll sort you out with my winnings. But yeah, I liked this, Paul, because one, it's another feel good story, but it really made me think there could be messages left, right, and centre, and we're just ignoring them because we're not used to that kind of communication.
Yeah, you said something in there. We should always be more aware of what's going on. We are definitely not aware, and we're becoming less aware as we have more distractions in our lives. So, I agree with that 100%. I think that if we're aware, some things that we attribute to coincidence, for example, like your traffic, stepping into traffic, may not be coincidences. They may be us receiving some sort of information or processing it at another level, just taking in what's going on around us and processing it at a different level. On the lottery numbers, I majored in math in college. I was pretty good at it, and I'm always fascinated by numerology, but I don't. There's many people who follow the numbers and the pseudoscience aspect of numerology. But I do, I see the logic behind like the golden ratio and things like that. And then I also see the shapes that things in nature grow up in. For example, a daisy. A daisy can be plotted. The flowers on the daisy petals can be plotted mathematically. The swirl on a snail's shell can be plotted mathematically. Wow, that kind of stuff blows my mind. That means that there's got to be more of that going around, and we're just if I'm not saying that there's a message in there, but I am saying that we should be more aware of those kinds of things and analyze them more. And instead, I don't want to stand on my soapbox here. Instead, we're emphasizing mathematics less and less in our world, and physics as well. I don't. I personally have a problem with that. So this is a perfect example of where, give people some incentive. If you're more aware of things, you might win the lottery.
Possibly so. Possibly
That guy,
so.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, your point about the mathematics, though, it's interesting, isn't it? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain mathematics is considered like the universal language. Scientifically and across space and
Right.
time, 1 plus 1 is 2 here, the same way as it's going to be on Mars. You're not going to get a different
Yeah.
answer just because you're somewhere else. So, yeah, I mean, personally, I always drifted at school. I'm talking to English and writing. They say you've either got that type of brain or a mathematical one. I mean, I can add up and I can sort all those really quite quickly as well. But when it comes to things like algebra and the complex theories, I just collapse mentally. I can't do it. But I do understand the universal language aspect of things. And you were mentioning about the snail shell, and I know you weren't saying that there's messages there, but some people say that it's encoded everywhere. The meaning of the universe, if you like. I mean, I know there was
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy who said it, but he was saying back around the Knights Templar times, and he said something. He was asked like, "What is God?" And he said something like, "God is length, width, and height." And he was referring to things like sacred geometry and how you
Mhm.
build certain buildings so they resonate properly. And again, it's back to that mathematics. So yeah, I think it is fascinating. The story itself's interesting, but yeah, mathematics, although it's not a personal favorite of mine because I'm not good at it, basically, there is. You're right. People should be learning this more, and like the physics aspect, because especially with quantum physics, as that's developing rapidly and rapidly, that's going to be a bit more of an insight into our reality. So I suppose you can't get away from the stuff, really, Paul. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting stuff. But and talking about segues, now I can't find a segue into this, but we seem to have a monster of the week on every episode, and I think this is our monster of the week today. So tell us about the Loveland Frogman, Paul.
Monster of the week. I think you've just created a new feature for us, Marcus.
Yeah.
I like that. So I live in Ohio, as I've mentioned before, and you, often you will see, at least in the paranormal world, you'll see maps of the United States, really of the world, the maps of England that will plot out what in this particular county or in this particular state, what is the number one cryptid of that area. And if you look at one for the United States and you look at one for Ohio, the number one cryptid most people would think would be Bigfoot because there's so many Bigfoot sightings here. But instead, it's a very unusual cryptid that was only found in one city in Ohio and no place else in the world. But yet, our state has become synonymous, or that cryptid has become synonymous in the paranormal world with our state. And that cryptid is the Loveland Frogman. Loveland Frogman was Loveland is a city in southwestern Ohio near Cincinnati, like between Cincinnati and Dayton. Um, the only place in the world where it's been seen. The and the reason why I bring it up is because they just had an annual festival. They just started doing more annual festivals, and we talk about this all the time that it's good for these festivals to occur because it makes more people aware of what other things might be going on. So, if you've never heard of the Loveland Frogman, sit back and relax. I'll fill you in on it.
Hmm.
So, most stories about the Frogman date back to 1972, but I gave a presentation at a UFO conference of all places, and one of the other speakers was a Loveland Frogman expert, and he turned me on to the real origin, which was in 1955. Really cool. It almost sounds like a joke. A traveling salesman was traveling through Loveland, and the joke would be he stopped at a farm and visited the farmer's daughter. But instead, he's driving on a dark road, and he sees something standing off in the distance. He pulls off, and he looks, and he saw what he thought were three upright frogs standing on two legs about 3 feet high, each one of them. 4 feet tall. I'm sorry, 4 feet tall. Big frogs. It's good frog legs, as they would say in New Orleans. The so uh, some people have said that he said that the heads were too big to be out of proportion for a frog. So he knew there was something unusual about them, other than the fact that they were 4 feet tall and standing upright. He said he watched them for 3 minutes, and at the end of 3 minutes, one of them took out a wand or a wand-like device, and it was shooting sparks out of it. Uh, so he decided at that point it was time for him to continue on to wherever it is he was going, the farmhouse or his call to sell whatever it is he was selling. So, but he did tell people about it. So that was the not as popular of an origin story as the next one, but it dates back to 1955 in Loveland. So 1972, the one that many people know about. So there were no sightings between 1955 and 1972, which I find unusual because normally when there's one cryptid sighting, there's many uh, copycat sightings, but there's also, if the cryptid is real and it's in the area, other people will see it moving towards wherever it is it might be going or coming back from wherever it came from. Uh, none, none in Loveland until 1972, when a reliable witness, a police officer, was driving in the same general area as the traveling salesman and over the Little Miami River, and his headlights picked up a 4 foot tall frog like creature standing on two legs, running across the road, running across the road. So he had to do a report, and he said that it was definitely a giant frog. It had leather skin. It had a combination frog humanoid body. Uh, he saw it squatting by a guardrail and like a frog, and then it hopped over the guardrail into the river. So he did a police report on it. They have, at least at that time, they had the police report that they could count on. Uh, no other sightings of the Loveland Frogman until 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, another cop, so we have another reliable witness, driving in the same area. He sees a frogman, again, squatting along the guardrail. This time, good Ohio police officer pulls out his gun and shoots it. Shoots the frogman, picks it up, puts it in the trunk of the squad car, and takes it back to the police station. Again, this has all been documented in the police report. He goes back to the officer in charge, and he says, "You'll never believe what I've got in my trunk." They both go out to the squad car, open the trunk, and there they saw an iguana with no tail. So this guy thought, in the distortion of the darkness of the time, the street light and the, maybe his headlights, all of that combined to make him think he saw a frogman. But what he actually saw was what he killed was a giant iguana with no tail, making it look like a frog. Um, Nonetheless, even though that story, the story of him seeing what he thought was a frogman and them eventually saying that it was iguana, that didn't stop the people of Loveland and in the surrounding areas from saying, "Oh my God, we're being invaded by an alien from some froggy planet called the Frogman."
Mm-hmm.
And the story just as all stories do, became an urban legend, became a paranormal legend, became so popular that Ohio is associated with it and now has a festival, which gets bigger and bigger every year. This year, not only did they have a festival with all the festivities of surrounding it, they released a documentary about the Frogman, and they showed two Frogman movies that I didn't even know existed. One is called The Frogman, and of course, the second one is The Frogman Returns, which in the Frogman Returns, a big fat frog called Jabba the Frog kidnaps the local princess, and then Indiana Jones shows up with Chewbacca or Bigfoot, and it's one of those kind of stories. It's not factual, but it's certainly entertaining. So I was shocked when that the festival continues. Although I'm thrilled that it continues, I didn't, as I said, I don't think too many people knew about the 1955 story about the traveling salesman as much as the 1972 story about the cops. But that's it, Marcus. 3 sightings, 2 by police officers, 1 by a traveling salesman, that have grown so exponentially that the Loveland Frogman has become the official cryptid of the state of Ohio. How about that?
It's interesting stuff. I wasn't aware of the 55 one, like you say, actually. Um, I mean, it'd be easy to dismiss this. As you say, the second 72 sighting was proved to be an iguana. And it might even be easy to dismiss or say that perhaps for whatever reason, somewhere out in the wild, a frog has managed to grow this tall and almost walk upright. What interests me though is the 55 one when the guy's speaking about some kind of wand with sparks coming off it. Now, obviously, that could have been, a manufactured element. I understand that. What I find interesting though is, and again, we take these things with a pinch of salt, so to make sure I get that in this week, is that it reminds me of reptilian encounters. People who said they've had experience with reptilian creatures. And a lot of them mention this wand or rod, they often describe it as. And it even shows up in some cases with extraterrestrials, and this rod, if they touch you with it, it'll paralyze you or knock you unconscious. It almost sounds like a magic wand, like you say. So that kind of thing makes you think, well, if we take the report from 55 at face value, and the guy did actually see that, well, that changes the whole account then, because we're not just talking about some strange creature. We've got a creature who's got a device.
Yeah.
So again, it's like the Bigfoot thing, really. I suppose. Are we thinking of? Are we looking at a flesh and blood creature that's managed to evade capture, or it's just very elusive, or is it something more supernatural or paranormal and it can just like leave our realm? But yeah, I mean, again, I love the idea that communities are celebrating this stuff, and having festivals, and it's keeping that. Even if people are just leaving it half-heartedly, and we said last week about that sense of fun, it's still though it evokes images of some beginning to an X-Files episode or some B movie, and that frogman's lurking around there, someone watching those people. So I'm not sure, but it is it's interesting stuff. It'd be interesting to see whether we get actual physical reports of the frogman in and around Loveland in the years that are going to come up, because as far as I'm aware, there's not been that many sightings. You might be able to correct me on that, Paul, since 72.
No, that's pretty much been it, Marcus. There's been people talking about the frogmen being in aliens and living, it was near the river, and there's some conduits, some sewer type pipes that they may be living in, but nothing, no substantial sightings like those, and certainly no photographs or any other kind of more solid evidence of them as well. But amphibians are this close to reptilians, so I think that link might keep the frogman in our attention span as well. Who knows, but yeah, I don't think we've seen the last. As long as there's festivals, there will be a frogman. How's that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. As long as it keeps people talking about it, Paul.
Yeah, like us. So you've got an interesting story that I wasn't aware of here, that tied to a graveyard. I don't think we had a graveyard in the Loveland story, but this one is certainly strangely connected. Let's put it that way. What do you got?
Yeah, so this is like a collection. It's a collection, and it's not a festival as such, but it's certainly something that people are being welcome to come and see. Mannequin Hall, and that's in Lincolnshire. There's a collection of mannequins, basically old mannequins, older dummies, and things like that. I think there's about 15,000 of these in total. And the guy behind this, Ross Edwards, is a former retail consultant. The lady behind that, she's decided to put on a display, and she's been building this up since about 2007. Basically, it's been nicknamed a mannequin graveyard, and they're strewn about Mannequin Hall, they're strewn about the property, and so you might think, okay, well, it'd be interesting to look at, but there's nothing necessarily scary about that. Well, not according to the people that have been. They have reported that they've witnessed some of the mannequins move of their own accord. They've reported feelings of, doom and fright and fear, and even heard strange whispers allegedly coming from the mannequins. Now, obviously, a skeptic and most people really will say, okay, well, that's just your mind going into overdrive. You know, mannequins probably do look a little bit scary, especially when they're all when it's thousands of them looking at you, so to speak. So yeah, it could be that. But there are other locations around the world where we've got inanimate objects which have been, you know, made to make people feel scared. And some people have insisted that there is actually some kind of paranormal presence there. The most well known would be, I believe it's in Mexico. I'm sure I pronounced this. It's the island of Xochimilco, and it's along the canals that interconnect these islands. There's on this island there have been left multiple dolls. You know, babies dolls, you know, garbage patch dolls, just all kinds of dolls, and they've been hung from the trees, just left there. And again, same thing. People who visit there not only say, "Well, it's a real bizarre sense that comes over them," but they report hearing strange voices. They report feeling like they're being watched. There's another place in America. This is at Fenton Shaw's Metal Sculpture Garden, where it's essentially scrap metal, but you know it's things that have been fashioned into objects and stuff, and it's just been left to rust. And people again get this macabre feeling. So it started making me think. We've spoken a lot about the power of belief. Can it manifest certain creatures, certain entities, certain energies, even? But could it all, and again, you know, take this with a pinch of salt, but could it breathe life into inanimate objects? Or could spirits see these objects and decide that I can communicate with people who are coming here? But yeah, I don't know if you've heard of any other locations where I know we've got the cursed Annabelle doll and things like that. And I don't know if I buy into that. One thing I will say is if anyone ever bought me a Chucky doll, from the Child's Play movies, I would not have that in my house. In fact, I would take that as far away as I possibly could. But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because we've got lots of objects which inspire fear. Cursed paintings, for example, is another one. It's quite interesting to see how the human mind reacts to this stuff. Really.
Yeah, the I'd never heard of the Mannequin Museum, Marcus. I have heard of the Doll Island off of in off the coast of Mexico, I think you said.
Yeah.
That one I'm familiar with. You know, in that the first thing I thought of when you were talking about mannequins is they're nothing but giant dolls. So whatever entities are occupying dolls, if that exists, then it's just a big doll. Um, I just finished reading a book and now I can't remember it. Oh, it's called Secondhand Souls. It's a novel about how souls leave after a person dies. A soul leaves and spends some time in an inanimate object before the person who they're designated to occupy comes into the store that they are on display in. So they're often books. That's the big thing. And that got me thinking. I saw a link here that you know it's entirely in the realm of possibilities if you believe in entities that they could occupy inanimate objects. It's a vessel. You know, think of it as a vessel. Dolls are hollow, mannequins are hollow, many of them are hollow. So they could be a vessel with space inside of it. Maybe they don't even need space. They can occupy the entire structure. And if they're in there and you know they've got that kind of power, then they have the kind of power to influence the people who come around them. Geez, you know, I can accept that pretty easily. Um, the whole I get worried when there's more than one, and you're talking about thousands of them. Then it becomes something that, boy, you know, I'd like to see people with better paranormal skills than I have do some investigation in that as well. But yeah, you know, why not? Why I think that it aliens, you know, if we're talking about we've been talking about aliens here, but if aliens are an entity rather than a physical being, they could just as easily come to Earth and look for something to occupy in order to be able to communicate with us. I think that that's been probably a science fiction plot, but I can certainly see if some sort of you know negative entity can occupy a doll and influence the little girl or the people who own that doll, why can't an alien do the same thing? There's more to this story than meets the eye, Marcus. I don't. I hope it's not I hope it's not Barbie dolls because all my nieces have Barbie dolls, and
Well, like you say, I mean, it'd be
Scary,
interesting to
yeah.
see
They
where
do
this.
talk to them.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, there you go. I mean, well, yeah, that immediately makes you think about imaginary friends and what imaginary friends might be. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you could
exactly.
go whichever way you want on things like that. But yeah, it's
Ooh,
another thing that we really need to see more research into, and I hope we do. It'd be interesting to see how this display, this collection, whatever you want to call it, how it proceeds as people do visit it, and whether we do get more reports. But yeah, I agree. Inanimate object, excuse me, could easily be possessed, for want of a better word. So, from further research into doll islands and mannequins, though, there's research going off the west coast of America, and this is equally outlandish to some, but interesting. Underwater alien bases possibly residing in the Pacific.
yeah, yeah. We talk about artificial intelligence. That is the hot topic. We don't talk about it, but it seems like everybody's talking about artificial intelligence and how scary it is. I try to uh, calm people down by saying that it's really just a giant search engine,
Yeah,
and it's great for comparing databases. And that's kind of I've had a number of stories recently, and this is one in particular, where someone is using artificial intelligence with massive databases, and AI is able to find correlations between seemingly uncorrelated databases and come up with connections that could solve some of our problems. And this is the one that I'm interested in. We talk about UFOs, but we are slowly but surely talking more about USOs, which are unidentified submerged objects. And we just had a story about 80% of the Earth being covered by water. If we're looking for messages from the oceans, it, they seem to be a good place to look for aliens and alien bases as well. Where do we look? And there's a guy in Poland. He's a UFO researcher. Antony Wedzikowski is his name. He had a database of 80,000 UFO reports from the National UFO Reporting Center in Newfork. And he took that and he used artificial intelligence to compare it to bathymetric data from the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, which is a government entity in the United States. Huge database of underwater activity. And what he found, he started to find some correlations, or at least the program, the AI did, concentrated clusters of underwater submerged objects as object unidentified that happened to be off the west coast of the United States. And as he looked deeper into the topography of the ocean floor, there was deep canyons wherever the sightings occurred. So, good correlation right there. In particular, the La Jolla Canyon, the Mugu Canyon, and the Monterey Canyon, all near islands that I think have had UFO activity as well. So there's huge interest in USOs now in the United States and around the world, especially since some Navy pilots off the coast of California saw the Tic Tac UFOs uh, and the multi able to both fly and go underwater. Trans-medium UFOs they call them. Which are still many of them are still unexplained. So that leaves it open for speculation and hopefully for analysis. So Wojciechowski noted in his report that these reports of the sightings were not random, but they occurred in burst. They actually occurred in burst over short periods of time. So like something was going on either in that canyon or on the surface, and there was many sightings all at once, and then they stopped. Like something was either triggering them to be to investigate what was going on, or maybe they themselves were exploring something that might be going on. He also looked to see if there were any other places where these occurred, and it was mostly on the west coast of the United States, very few on the Gulf Coast, very even fewer on the East Coast. So again, that correlation came from analyzing the database. If they're not drones, what could they be? So many people said, well, these are obviously crypto terrestrials. And there's a crypto-terrestrial hypothesis that not many people are aware of, but more and more are becoming aware of it, which proposes that UFOs are actually ships from a group of beings that are not human, but share the earth with us. And they basically occupy the 80% that we don't pay attention to, other than throwing our stuff in and sailing on it. They've got it free range to themselves. The A few people are interested, though. There's a congressman, Tim Burchett from Tennessee. He has mentioned USOs in his presentations to Congress about opening the UFO files. There's also a retired admiral, Tim Gallaudet, or Gallaudet, I think. He claims that he has seen the underwater technology, and he is convinced that it is not of human design. So it's something, he doesn't believe that it's from outer space. He believes the crypto-terrestrial, that there's something under the ocean that may have been there long before us, and that's where these are coming from. Wojciechowski said he was surprised that no one has done this study before. The databases are there. So AI is a tool that is now allowing us to dig very deeper, much deeper than we could before, into these databases. So he hasn't published the study yet, so it hasn't been peer reviewed. So you can be skeptical about it. But the hot spots are certainly tied to canyons and crevices. That's the big thing, his big conclusion. There's also another theory called the intraterrestrial hypothesis, or inner Earth, which says that not in the crevices or canyons, but for example, in a hollow Earth, there exist beings that are not human, but have been here long before us. Also, we talked about Atlantis before. The Atlantis many people consider Atlantis to be the city of intraterrestrials as opposed to humans. And then the Baltic Sea anomaly, one that I have done articles about. In the Baltic Sea, there's an anomaly on the bottom of the Baltic Sea that looks an awful lot like a spaceship, and there are weird readings around it, and it's very murky water, so it's hard to see and hard to analyze. So it's conducive to conspiracy theories, but we don't have an answer. That's the point. We don't have an answer as to what exactly it is. So, my conclusion to all of that is a question. Are we looking in the wrong direction for answers? And I think we've touched on that a number of times already here. I think we are. What about you, Marcus?
No, I agree with you actually on this quite fully. I mean, just first of all, if aliens are real and traveling through space, well, I mean, that's nigh on impossible. Outside of some amazing technology that either goes faster than the speed of light or creates wormholes, travel through space is just not feasible. It's just not. It's just not appropriate, really, for them for an advanced civilization to travel that way. By the time they get here, they'll all be dead, essentially. You can't get around that outside of technology. The notion that extraterrestrials are a non-human intelligence, although still terrestrial to us, I find that quite intriguing. I mean, stats are hard to nail down, but it's approximately 60% of UFO sightings are either over or near water, either like large bodies, large lakes, or oceans and seas. So more than half occur near water. Many of them are on the coast, the east-west coast of the United States, England, which I'll come on to in a moment. So, and you mentioned Atlantis that we talked about last week. And what's interesting there is the lines of it disappeared below the water in a day and a night. Now, people take that it's a cataclysm and, there was a flood. That could have been the case, but it could have just been nothing more than a flit. They might have just decided, look, we're going underground, for whatever reasons, we're going that way. And so who knows? I mean, so maybe that UFOs are the technological leftovers from Atlantis. But yeah, the west coast of America is really interesting because, like you say, there's been rumors of bases there, and again, that old pinch of salt, but I mean, it isn't. It keeps coming up. I know one researcher who did a lot of research. I think it was Catalina Island off the west coast of California, Catalina Island, and he was saying that there's regular sightings of UFOs coming in and out of the water there. Over here in the UK, I mean, off the coast of Wales and off the coast of Cornwall, same thing. Devon, same region, same thing. Lights and objects coming in and out of the water. The North Sea, which is about 40 minutes drive from where I'm sitting right now, basically. Same thing. Multiple reports of objects hovering over the water. And if you follow that North Sea, you'll end up in the Baltic regions, where you spoke about the Baltic anomaly. So, yeah, so I suppose people are saying, okay, are they alien bases? Or could it be possible that we've got like an anti, not an antediluvian, an underwater civilization? I mean, they say we know more about the moon than we do about what's under the water on Earth. And so that's quite bizarre, really. But I mean, how do we get down there? I mean, we saw what happened last year with the Titanic sub, so I know you can get down to those levels, but the environment is, for want of a better word, alien to us. And so it's there's so much left to discover. And we don't know if there, and again, I'm throwing stuff out here, there's no scientific basis for this, but we don't know if there are caves, underwater caverns, where it's not actually underwater. It's actually out of the water, but you have to go into the water to access this stuff. We don't know any of that. So yeah, I think the notion of underwater UFOs, USOs, and the fact that they could be using the waters to traverse the planet, and there could be civilizations there. It sounds really bizarre. That's the point of the show, but it's not that outlandish when you really start to think about it. It's possible, is what I'm saying.
That's right. That's right. Of the many things we talk about, there's more scientific uh, connection to underwater possibilities than other things that are bizarre. So I wouldn't say it's bizarre at all. I would say it's in the realm of possibility. And obviously, I didn't realize this, but we have an underwater theme here to this show. Well, just looking, I think you have an underwater story as well. Why don't you share that one with us?
All right, well, buckle up because this is a good one, basically. I'm going to tell it and then I'm going to get to the reasons why I picked it afterwards. Now, this is really the wrong side of believable, but it is great. It really tickled me, this. A couple of weeks ago, a story surfaced online. There were no names mentioned, but there was a mugshot, and I accept that could have been anybody's face. They didn't necessarily the person who said this, but the claims were that this guy had been kidnapped by dolphins and taken underwater off the Florida coast, and where he was to build an underwater base, funnily enough. Now, it doesn't say whether he was accosted by the dolphins in the water. It doesn't say whether they launched their nefarious kidnapping campaign on land, but essentially they got him in the water. They took him down there, and they wanted him to build an underwater base, which makes a certain amount of sense given the lack of dexterity, I guess, in the fins for as clever as dolphins are. Now, why they wanted this city built, I don't know. Whether it was for them, whether it was for humans, or maybe even a halfway point for them to meet. He basically said that's what they have to do. He did this, and then he went public with his claims. Now, most people read that and thought, okay, and then moved on. However, a couple of days after that, the local police, and it was the Lee County Police Department in Florida, they saw fit to release a statement on this, which I just thought, what? So I read that. That's what really drew my attention to it. Why on earth are the police commenting on this? And they were looking to reassure the public that this hadn't happened. There was no need to fear dolphins, and the real estate is not being built off the coast of Florida under the water. Now, they did do this with a tongue in cheek, admittedly. They were messing around. But I think most people would have just already forgotten this story and moved on if they hadn't have actually made mention of it. And it started me thinking about, well, how many other times have the police in history commented or released official statements on stuff that realistically they'd have no business doing so? Spring-heeled Jack, for example, back in Victorian England, a guy, if you like, who leapt out on people and jumped over walls. Most people say that was a prankster, and it most likely was. But the police took it really seriously. They released statements, there were rewards for me. What a Duke, I think it might have been the Duke of Wellington, even came out of retirement literally to go and find this guy. He never did. There was a case in Illinois, just a little bit northwest of where you are, Paul. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon, I believe is how you pronounce that name.
Right.
Again, similar thing. No one comes to any harm. It was more like kind of a little bit of mischievous prowling, but however, there was what appeared to be a mist or a gas pumped into the property. So that's obviously a concern. And again, the police commented on this, and you had certain members of the public looking to take matters into their own hands again, go out and shoot whoever it is. So I suppose they have to take control of the situation. And the other one I found was the Dover Demon in Massachusetts, I believe, for 3 nights, people saw this strange white creature, a little bit alien-like, but not reported as an alien. Multiple parts of the town it was witnessed by, with multiple people. And again, similar thing, the police saw fit to comment on it to reassure the public that nothing had been seen and there was no need for vigilante groups to go out. Now, those 3 cases, though, you can almost see why the police made a comment, or just to stop the public taking matters into their own hands and things of that nature, or just to show that we were on top of this. But this, the guy saying he's been kidnapped by dolphins, I just think, well, why even waste your time? Why even comment on it in the first place? So I don't know what to make of this, but I obviously don't believe it happened. I don't think the dolphins are going to come and get us. But as I say, it really tickled me, and it just makes me wonder if you really trawled through every internet forum, everything you could. Like you mentioned AI. If you could put into AI, find me outlandish, bizarre, unbelievable stories today, I bet it'd come back with more than people actually realise, Paul.
Oh, far more, Marcus. I like that. I'm a big fan of the police. I don't. I would like for them to have more time to investigate stories like yours, rather than some of the things that we force them to be able to have to do. I think they'd enjoy it too.
Yeah.
But it's nice that you have, like the Frogman, you have some piece of evidence, a police report that links the legend to some sort of reality. Those are great stories. The gas man, I remember the gas man, and Spring Heel Jack, that's another good one. You're right. People who you wouldn't expect to be interested in things like that are not only interested but involved, as you described. So that then it becomes out of the realm of practical joke or whimsy into, wow, if that many people, and people that with that intelligence believe this enough to get involved with the investigation, maybe there's something there and it's worth more, but another look. I don't know. But yeah, the dolphins taking you underwater. That's definitely a good plot for a movie, maybe a cartoon. I'm not sure if it'd be a good movie, but it might be a good cartoon.
It's I'm going to put I'm going to put it out there right now. I think this already is the story of the year in terms of weird stories. That's what my money's on, Paul. But
Yeah.
if you look at things from the past, everybody likes to go away. Everybody likes to go on holiday and things like that, including to Florida. But some people, at least the protagonist in the next account I'm gonna enthrall you all with, is 2 English couples who went on holiday to the past, 70 years into the past, apparently. Now, as I say, it involved 2 English couples, Jeff and Pauline Simpson and Len and Cynthia Gisby. And they were traveling to Spain, but they weren't going to fly. They were going to drive through France, obviously cross the border, and then settle in Spain for a week or two as a holiday, and then drive back. This took place in the autumn of 1979, incidentally. Now, it was October time. They left Dover. They obviously crossed the Channel. They were driving through France, and they were looking for a place to stay. It was getting late. It was getting dark. And the one hotel that they found, they were basically told, look, we're full. You can't stay, but there's another hotel down the road. And so off they went down this old country road in France. And they said they started to notice. I didn't pay too much attention to it. They started to notice old posters on the wall that looked like they've been there for decades. Old fashioned basically. They just said, okay, it's not well up kept. When they arrived at the building, similar thing. It was all lit up. It was open, no problem. But they noticed how it looked remarkably old-fashioned and things of that nature. Even more so when they went into the inside. No telephones, for example, or a basic old telephone on the desk. There was no mod cons that you would expect, even back in the late 70s. But they needed somewhere to stay. They were desperate, so they got a room each. Each couple got a room, and off they went. And again, these little details, they noticed that there was no glass in the windows. It was just shutters basically, and they just couldn't wrap their head around what was actually going on. Now, later next day, when they were about to check out, one of them took a photograph by the window. And we'll come back to that later. So just keep that in the back of your mind because they liked how it was, the design of it. When they went to check out, they pulled out obviously modern francs. It would have been then before the euro and thing and to pay. And the receptionist looked at him. He just had no idea what he was paying with because just to bring him up to speed, I believe the French monetary system was completely overhauled in the 20s, 30s, possibly just after the war. So the money that you would have used in 1979 wouldn't have been appropriate back then. I mean, remember, these guys didn't know that there were 70 years in the past at this point. They came to an arrangement. They were allowed to leave the hotel. It doesn't really say what the arrangement was. And then local police gave them directions to get back onto, to get to where they wanted to go. The rest of the holiday went without incident. They arrived in Spain, they had a good time, and they traveled back. And as we were traveling back, they were saying, well, let's find that quirky little hotel and we'll spend the night there again. And they drove around for hours and hours, knowing that they were in the right place, but they could not find it at all. They eventually found the hotel they had originally approached to stay in when they first arrived in France. And this time there was room there. The guy on the reception, though, had no knowledge of them, of seeing them before. He said, no, it wasn't me. The guy they described, no, he's not worked here. And the hotel that they were giving directions to, it was like, basically, I don't know what you're talking about. So they stayed there, they returned home, but obviously, they were a bit intrigued at this point. And they were doing some research, on French accommodation, that the France in general. And one of them happened to come across a picture of a policeman around 1900, 1905. And they knew that they'd seen that attire at the hotel where they'd stayed that one evening. And essentially, they started to then put two and two together. When the photographs were developed, all were there apart from the picture that had been taken in front of that window. It was just not there. It was missing. It wasn't even spoiled. It just was not there. So the witnesses said. He got a lot of publicity at the time. A couple of psychic researchers, regressed them, tried to get to the bottom of it. But essentially, it seems like it's another time slip event. And now I joked about, saying who wouldn't like to go on holiday to the past. Well, I just think if someone, a time slip, it's not like a time machine where you can, if indeed you can do that, if you can build a device and it'll take you wherever you want to go, like the DeLorean or whatever. A time slip, it's circumstances, the atmosphere, everything has to be correct for you to slip through there. If somehow somebody managed to master that, they'd be able to make a hell of a lot of money because who wouldn't want to visit the past for real and be able to get back again just simply by going on a nice, pleasant drive? So we mentioned a lot about business ideas, Paul. I think that's something we need to add onto the list. Holidays to the past. But I mean, I know, like me, you've written loads about time slips and time displacements.
Oh,
It's an
yeah.
interesting story, and there's more than people think, isn't there? Really?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very detailed time slip type of
Mm.
story. And boy, I had high hopes for the photograph. The It's too bad, but it makes sense. It makes sense that what they thought was there was really not there. Yeah, boy, if you could, if I put more faith in time slip, an area, than in a time machine.
Yeah.
Uh, so if a time slip area or portal or whatever it might be is stationary, yeah, then we could certainly turn that into a business, build a hotel around it. But if they move around, if it's something that changes locations, then it's like Doctor Who. You never know where he's going to show up. Where's the time slip going to be? We don't have any control over it. Wow, boy, I hadn't thought about that. Interesting story. Interesting uh, adventure that the people went on, and then to return. I like that they returned to the place looking for what they had seen before. Uh, I Yeah, would I like to do that? Sure, sure. As long as I had a good, reliable return ticket, return flight.
Yeah, that's the key there, isn't it? We can get them
Yeah,
there, but we can't get them back. So we'll have to probably some more work on
exactly.
the drawing board, Paul, before we launch that business. Now, this though, we're going to end the show with another fascinating story, account, encounter. Chess. I like a good game of chess. Apparently, it's been brought here by aliens, Paul.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you if you like to play chess. I am. I play chess. I'm not good at chess. I do love board games. I am a huge board game fan. Backgammon is one of my favorites, and that I most people think chess might have been the original board game, but actually backgammon can lay claim to being one of the first board games ever discovered. But this is about chess, so that's what we're talking about here. The so this starts out with a recent story. There were archaeologists in Russia at a burial ground in the Akshaysky district in southern Russia. So they're digging in this burial ground, and they discovered the remains of an ancient board game that they didn't weren't aware of, which looked like it dated back to the fourth millennium BC, and it looked like a remote precursor of chess. So why would they think that? The board that they found was divided into two sections, like, two different players, separated by a crossbar. And the archaeologists found, they described them 50 hemispherical gaming pieces carved out of bone, and they were flat on one side. So they looked like pieces that could stand on the board and be moved around like on a chessboard. the One of the archaeologists took um, information about the other origin of chess, which many people think it was in Persia or in India in the 700 AD CE, and compared the two, did another one of database comparison, and he could find direct correlations between chess and this ancient game. So as far as he was concerned, this was some form of chess that stayed that way and stayed in that Russian area for a long, long time, and never migrated to any other location. So nobody else played this version, and nobody knows about it today. This was the first time they found it. Uh, Most people believe that chess originated in the 7th century in India, and then traders on the Silk Road took it to Persia, and Persia lays claim. Most people say, "Oh, it's a Persian game." It actually came from India, but Persia, people in Persia wrote down the rules, so they get to claim that they would, if they didn't invent it, they at least wrote down the rules and standardized it. And the first book of rules was found in Persia. Along the Silk Trail, they also went. It ended up in China, and it ended up in Uzbekistan as well. So they say. But when I was doing research on my book, What Would You Say to a Naked Space Alien? I found a story about a Russian political leader who claimed that he had evidence that aliens brought chess to Earth. I'd never heard that before.
Mhm.
This is a legitimate guy, not just in the political world, but also in the chess world. His name is Kursan Ayumshinov. Boy, I butchered the names. Uh, but you can look him up. He was the former president of the Republic of Kalmykia in the Russian Federation. He was president from 1993 to 2010. So just look him up right there. He was also the former president of FIDE, which is the International Governing Body of Chess. So he was a chess, I don't know if he was a chess master, but he was certainly high up in the chess world, as well as being high up in the Russian political world. And he claimed that not only did extraterrestrials bring it, but they invented it and brought it to Earth. So, how does he know this? So, he claimed that he was abducted by aliens. He didn't say when. In 1997. He was abducted in 1990. And the aliens, he said, were wearing yellow space. They took him to their home planet, and he saw chess games there. So he offered to play chess, as a way to maybe connect with them. And they refused to play with them because they said, we're far superior to you as far as chess goes because we invented it and we gave it to you. So they said, us playing chess with you would be like you playing chess with ants. That's the way they described it. And I can relate to that. Although, ants are pretty smart, and especially, with that hive mentality, they could move the pieces around.
Yeah, yeah.
Ants are good at doing things like that. So uh, so he firmly believed that he says he came back, and from that point on he told people that not to believe the Persian story or the Indian story or anything like that, that they didn't say what planet these aliens were from, but he claimed that aliens brought chess to Earth. I was wondering, if there were any other games that we might speculate would have been brought to Earth by aliens. I like to play poker as well. I hope poker didn't come from, Venus Hold'em might be a good name for poker that came from Venus. But I don't know. You're a bigger chess player than I am. Does that sound like reasonable to you that chess came from another planet?
Well, it's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if I want to nail anything to the mast, Paul, but one thing I will say though is, like yourself, I've read multiple alien abduction reports, and not that chess has been mentioned specifically, but there have been reports of people seeing, like, they described it as a table that was molded to the floor, but it looked like there was a board game on it, some kind of board game. So it has come up before, but not chess. And I know if you, I'm not sure if it's the Aztecs or certainly one of the civilizations around the South Americas. And there was a game noted that they said was given to them by the gods. So take what you will from that. But that was very similar to basketball, where it was played in a court. There was no net, and the ring or the hoop, if you like, was sideways on. So each team would have to put the ball through there, and that's how you scored. So
Yeah.
no, I haven't. It makes a certain amount of sense though that chess is a cerebral game, but it kind of it's based on brawn, if you like, that battle as well. But it's very cerebral. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's interesting that this guy is making those comments though, because as you say, he's from quite high ranking and a lot to lose in terms of his credibility and so on and so forth. But interesting stuff. It's interesting stuff. I mean, if aliens existed, I suppose they've got to amuse themselves as well. So why not?
That's what I was thinking. When you're traveling light years, you got to have something to do on the ship. Even if you go back to Star Trek, the characters on Star Trek played three-dimensional chess, so you could. Somebody was thinking. Gene Roddenberry was thinking along the same line. Uh, I don't know. I love board games. I would like to think that they were developed here and not a gift from above, from whether it's from the gods or from aliens. I'd rather think that we came up with it because we continue to come up with it. Although here's one angle to take a look at, and that is there any game that is as good as chess that has been invented since chess? Or is chess the ultimate game, and therefore maybe it was the original game brought to us by aliens, and we've never been able to meet that high standard of board game?
Do you know what? I think you're probably right because I don't think Monopoly holds its hat to chess, really, or any of
No,
the other typical board games.
no.
No, I think. Do you know what, Paul? I think you're right. I don't think we've ever beaten chess, and I think that's a great place to leave this episode. To be honest with you, because we're not going to top that. I
No,
think
I don't think
chess is the universal game that you've called
yeah.
it.
Well, we talked about music being a way to communicate with aliens. Maybe chess might be an alternative way to communicate with aliens. We'll keep it in the back of our mind in our backpack. You would have to explain to them what the little horse is, because they they may not have little horses on their planet. But other than that, I think we might be able to have a common bond with them.
Well, you know what people are going to say after that is that it weren't just chess, horses. They were brought here too. The proof's on the chessboard, Paul. So,
There you
you
go. You're
know,
right. You're
absolutely.
right.
Look, Paul, thanks for joining me as always. It's been fascinating speaking to you again. It's been funny. It's made me laugh. And it just maybe makes the world look a slightly strange place, but maybe a little bit less scary, actually, Paul. So,
There you go. That's right. And it could only happen on Earth, as our title suggests. I think that's going to be our claim to fame is these odd stories. Maybe aliens will come here and then they'll go back to where they're from and say, you want to get some strange stories. There's this little blue planet, third rock from the sun. Go visit them and check these two guys out.
yeah, I think you're right, and we'll have to come up with. We'll sell them the format rights. They can take that from us or what currency they've got, but I'm sure we can come to some kind of arrangement. So we'll keep looking for that. As always, you guys, look, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure that you leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Most importantly, check out Me Time for the Mind. Check out Paul's work on the Substack, and make sure you join us again next week. Until next time. Goodbye and take care.